Hi, this is Jack Stanley, and I wanted to talk about this amazing age of the Internet. Now, it's very hard for the present generation, those that are in their 20s, to understand a world without Internet. And it's almost equally hard to the previous generation to recognize a world without Internet, because the Internet has been around since the 1990s. And if I may say so, it has totally transformed society as a whole. Now, we have to go back a few generations, get to mine, and I wanted to talk about what the world was like before the Internet. Because it's an interesting thing, because we focus so much on the Internet, we rarely think about the world before it. And I can tell you, years ago, if you work for a company and you had to have a business meeting, everybody would fly to a specific location so they could meet face to face. And therefore, you would do that quite often. People would be on business meetings and business trips constantly. Today, a lot of that has changed. You have various types of messaging systems where you can talk face-to-face via the Internet. Now, people will sit there and say, what's new and exciting about that? It's been going on for 20-some-odd years. Well, that's true. But I'm talking about 40 years ago. This is the year 2018, so let's go back to 1978. Let's just use that specific year as a guide. Now, that was 2 years after our bicentennial, and of course, during the 70s, computers were looked upon as these things from the future. We didn't use any terminology pertaining to computers because computers were the future. They're of science fiction. You would watch, old science fiction, they'd say computer. Or you'd see like Star Trek from the 60s, where they'd sit there and say computer, and the computer would say, yes, Captain. That hasn't totally happened yet, but it's an interesting thing that computers were of the future. I was at the World's Fair, and I went to see the House of Tomorrow. I'm still waiting for the House of Tomorrow, by the way. And this was 1964, and the computer ran the house. Vacuumed the floors, had dinner practically prepared, cleaned everything. And of course, they would take care of lights and this and that and everything else. And some of that stuff today, of course, is part of our computers. But at the time, it was like, whoa, that's the amazing future. Another thing that's kind of fascinating is groups, civic organizations, fraternal organizations. They flourished in the 1970s. But once the age of Internet came, everything started to change. Secondly, books. We all had books. We'd always go and buy books if you were into reading. And I am. I love books. As you can see behind me, I got books all over the place. I have about 2,000 books. The thing is that today, a lot of your information can be garnered through the Internet. You don't need those heavy encyclopedias. You don't need, those poor people come knocking on your door, like knock, knock, knock. And they would sit there and say, would you be interested in buying Encyclopedia Britannica? And everybody go, oh, that sounds very interesting. Today, I don't think anybody sells them anymore. I think they've practically stopped publishing because there's no reason to. Because you have the Internet. A lot of books that were reference books, you don't need. Because it's on the Internet. The entire book industry is sadly dying. And bookstores. Years ago, I was remarking to a friend the other day, I said, do you remember years ago? You could never get a parking space close to the bookstore because there'd be so many people. Well, the other night we happened to drive by and pull in there, and we're like 5 spaces away from the bookstore itself because there weren't that many people. Borders Books is gone. A lot of those wonderful mom and pop bookstores are gone. A lot of organizations have kind of closed their doors. Sadly, because they have just dwindled in size due to the fact that nobody's really interested in going because they can do everything on the internet. People don't go anywhere. When they want to meet people, they can sit and talk. Let's talk about dating before the age of internet. How socially different it was. People would meet people at picnics or at church or at civic gatherings, or on the other end of the spectrum in a bar. Now, you basically meet online. You have sites dedicated to every form of dating or just hooking up or meeting people. I mean, you name the genre, the interest, the whatever, it's there. Same thing for organizations dealing with research and this and that. It's all online. Therefore, if you look, public libraries are closing. Lots of other organizations that once drew in lots of people are dwindling and falling out of favor, and in many cases have long since disappeared. You know, when I was a kid in the 1960s, of course, we didn't even think of computers because there was nothing. Now, let's just go back to 1964. The computer was this word that people heard, but everybody had their own vision of what a computer was, because there was nothing to explain to us what a computer was. It was some strange thing from the future. Probably our teachers used to say, computers are the future. And it kind of came in conversation with the fact that cars would be flying and we'd be eating capsules, and we'd have one finger because we basically use buttons. And that was all the stuff that people were saying in the 1960s. But here we are in the year 2018. If I want to talk to people in any part of the world, I can go on my computer and I can maybe use Skype or whatever and talk to them face to face in real time. Now, maybe today you don't see the amazing nature of that, but to be one who never saw it for a good deal of their life, this is incredible. It's an amazing thing that I can converse, that I can know people from the other side of the world. I was born in the age of party lines on phones. I mean, it's really changed. And it's in many respects, for someone my age, it's shocking and amazing, because anything I want to do, I can do right online. I can talk to people via this platform all over the world through this whole thing called the internet. So for you today, and all the stuff that you do, and all the things that you have, look at this. Be amazed by it. Treasure it. You really don't realize what you have, especially young folks who never saw anything but this. Interesting thing, one last thing to mention before I close here, and that is, in the 1970s, we opened up the World Trade Center in New York City, all those towers and everything else, and that was dedicated to world trade so people could talk to each other. They have rebuilt the World Trade Center and their office buildings, because You know where the World Trade Center is today. It's the very telephone in which you're holding. You don't need a World Trade Center. You carry it. That's how much the world has changed. Thank you.